All right, here we go. We have got two functions, f and g, are called inverse functions. Inverse functions. If the following statements are true, if g of f of x for all equals x for all x in the domain of f, and if f of g of x equals x for all the x in the domain of g. And graphically, you can use the horizontal. So this is going to be a little bit different. Horizontal line test to determine whether a function will have an inverse. And so let's talk through this real quick. Think of y equals x squared. All right, there we go. So if we have an inverse, it's going to get flipped across the xy axis, or xy, the xy line. And as we do that, we would end up with x equals y squared. So here we have y equals x squared. As we flip it across or reflect it across the xy line, we'll end up with that there, which is x equals y squared. And as we talked about a little bit, take the square root of both sides. If we were solving for y, we end up with y equals plus or minus the square root of x. And because that plus or minus, it's no longer a function, and because we plug in one x value, but we're getting out two different y values. So how can we see whether or not there's going to be an inverse to begin with? Well, if we use that horizontal line test of the original function, and knowing that it's going to be flipped over this line, reflected over the line of y equals x, if at one point it has 2 points that it's going through horizontally, then that means it's going to have 2 points that it's going through vertically. And so this is no longer a function over here. And so since it's not a function, it doesn't have an inverse. Because remember, back to the definition of the inverse, that any value of x that I plug into f of x and then that value into g of x has to be in the domain of f, and that any value of g of x that I plug in for x has to be, and then plug that value in for f of x, has to be in the domain of g. And it's not a function any longer, because if I'm plugging in my g of x values, my f of x values into g of x, I'm not getting just x back out because I'm getting two different numbers. Now it's, I don't know which, is it the positive, is it the negative? And so it's inverse doesn't exist. And you can graph it, the reflection across the xy line, obviously, but it's no longer a function because we can't tell whether or not will I get uh, positive, positive y or negative y when I'm plugging in my my x values. So, all right, hope that helps.